My name is Simone Brandt, and I'm 32 years old. I remember the exact moment my life split into two versions, the one where I kept quiet and the one where I finally didn't. It was December 24th, one day before Christmas, and I was standing in the kitchen of my parents' house in Cincinnati, still in my coat from the drive over, when my father walked in wearing that expression I had learned to dread since childhood. Not anger. Worse than anger. That slow, satisfied smirk that meant he had already decided something and was only now getting around to telling me. He leaned against the counter, crossed his arms, and said it like he was reading from a grocery list. Your brother's friends are spending Christmas here. It's only 25 people. You'll handle the cooking and the setup. That was it. No question. No please. Just a statement delivered with the confidence of a man who had never once been told no by the women in his family. My brother Trevor was standing behind him in the doorway, and when I looked at him, hoping for some flicker of discomfort, some small sign that he understood how insane this was, he just nodded. Like it was already settled. Like I was already the help. I stood there for a moment, coat still on, bag still over my shoulder. 25 people. Christmas Eve. Less than 24 hours notice. My father had said it's only 25 people, the way someone says it's only a quick favor, it's only one thing, it's only your entire holiday, your rest, your time, your dignity. I had driven 2 hours from Columbus for what I thought was a quiet family Christmas. I had taken days off work. I had bought gifts, wrapped them carefully, packed a bag with the kind of hope you never quite manage to kill no matter how many times this family disappoints you. And they expected me to cook, clean, and bow. What my father didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that 3 weeks earlier, my coworker Jade had mentioned a last-minute deal on flights to Maui. I had laughed it off at the time. I wasn't serious about it. I had looked it up purely out of curiosity, the way you look at things you don't think you'll ever actually do. But something made me screenshot it. Something made me save the airline's number in my phone. And that night, standing in my parents' kitchen with my coat still on and my bag still on my shoulder, looking at my father's smirk and my brother's nod, I felt something shift inside me that I can only describe as a door closing very quietly and very permanently. I smiled. Not a big smile. Just a small, private one that I kept mostly to myself. Okay, I said. Let me just freshen up. I went upstairs to the guest room, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened my phone. The flight was still available. There was one seat left on a red-eye departing Cincinnati at 11:45 that night, arriving in Maui the following morning. It cost more than I had planned to spend, and I didn't care even a little bit. I booked it in under 4 minutes. Then I texted Jade, who had been to Maui twice and knew exactly which hotel to recommend, and she responded in seconds with a name, a rate, and the words, "You are finally doing something for yourself." I booked the hotel. 4 nights. Ocean view. I sat there for a moment looking at the confirmation emails coming in one after another, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief so clean it almost hurt. I came back downstairs with my bag still packed, said I had forgotten something important in Columbus and needed to run back quickly, and that I would return in a couple of hours. My father didn't look up from the television. Trevor was already on his phone. Neither of them questioned it because it never occurred to either of them that I might be lying, that the woman they had spent 32 years taking for granted might be standing in their living room for the very last time that Christmas. I drove to the airport in the kind of calm that only comes after a decision has been fully made. No second guessing, no guilt spiral, no rehearsing apologies in my head. I parked the car, checked my bag, and sat in the terminal eating an overpriced sandwich with a ginger ale, and I want to tell you honestly, it was one of the best meals I have ever had in my life. Not because of the food. Because of what it represented. I was sitting alone in a quiet airport on Christmas Eve, completely unbothered, and the only feeling I had was something close to joy. My phone started ringing around 9 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. Then again at 9:40. Then my mother called, then Trevor called, then a number I didn't recognize called twice, which I assumed was one of Trevor's friends trying to figure out where the food was. I turned my phone to silent, put it in my bag, and watched the departures board until my gate was posted. When they arrived at the house on Christmas morning and found an empty kitchen, I was somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, wrapped in a thin airline blanket, watching the sun come up through a small oval window. And I was told later, by my cousin Reese, who heard it from my aunt, that when Trevor walked into that kitchen and saw nothing, not a single pan on the stove, not a single dish prepared, his face went completely pale. But the real surprise was still to come. I landed in Maui on Christmas morning at 9:47 a.m. local time, and the first thing I felt when I stepped off the plane was warm air, real, heavy island warmth that hits you differently than any other kind. Not the suffocating heat of summer back home, but something gentler, like the weather itself was welcoming me personally. I collected my bag, found my shuttle, and rode to the hotel with my forehead resting against the window watching palm trees pass by one after another, and thinking about absolutely nothing. That was the gift I had given myself without realizing it. Silence inside my own head. For the first time in years, there was no mental list running, no anxiety about what someone needed from me, no low hum of obligation that had been the background noise of my entire adult life. The hotel room was small, but the view was not. I stood on the narrow balcony for almost 20 minutes just looking at the water. The ocean in Maui is a color that photographs never quite capture, this deep, shifting blue-green that changes depending on where the light is sitting. I stood there until my legs got tired, then I ordered room service, ate on the balcony in my pajamas, and fell asleep by early afternoon with the sliding doors still open and the sound of waves coming in off the Pacific. My phone had accumulated 31 missed calls by the time I turned the volume back on that evening. My father had called 7 times. Trevor had called 9. My mother had left 4 voicemails, each one progressively more dramatic than the last. The first was confused. The second was irritated. The third was tearful in a way that felt more performed than genuine. The fourth was a combination of all 3 delivered in a single breathless message that ended with, "I don't know what has gotten into you, Simone, but this is not how family behaves." I listened to all 4 of them sitting cross-legged on the hotel bed with a glass of pineapple juice in my hand, and when the last one finished I set the phone down on the nightstand and did not call anyone back. What I did instead was text my cousin Reese, who was the only person in my family I actually trusted. Reese was 28, sharp, and had spent years watching me absorb every unreasonable request this family produced without complaint. I sent her a photo of the view from my balcony and a single sentence, "I'm in Maui. Merry Christmas." She called me back in 40 seconds, laughing so hard she could barely speak. She told me what had happened at the house, how Trevor had called their aunt asking if she could bring food, how my father had ordered expensive catering at the last minute and been furious about the cost, how 3 of Trevor's friends had left early because the atmosphere was tense and uncomfortable, how my mother had cried at the dinner table not because she missed me but because the evening had not gone the way she imagined it. Reese told me all of it and I listened and felt nothing except a quiet, settled sense that I had done exactly the right thing. On the second day, I rented a bicycle and rode along the coastal path until my thighs burned. On the third day, I took a snorkeling tour and floated above a reef for 2 hours watching fish move through coral in colors I didn't have names for. On the 4th day, I did nothing at all except sit on the beach and read a novel I had been meaning to finish for 8 months. I ate when I was hungry, slept when I was tired, and spoke to no one from home. It was the most complete rest I had experienced since before I could remember, and it clarified something for me that I had been circling around for years without ever quite landing on it. I had been trained from childhood to believe that love in this family was transactional, that my value was tied directly to my usefulness. That if I cooked enough, cleaned enough, showed up enough, arranged enough, swallowed enough of my own needs quietly enough, then I would be loved in return. What 4 days alone in Maui showed me was that I had been paying into a system that was never going to pay me back. My father's smirk on Christmas Eve was not a one-time cruelty. It was the summary of 32 years of a dynamic that I had the power to simply stop participating in. When I flew home, I felt different in a way that was hard to explain but immediately visible, apparently, because Jade said the moment she saw me walk into the office after the holidays that something about my face had changed. "Less braced," she said. Like I had stopped waiting for something to hit me. My father called one more time in January. I answered. He spoke for several minutes about disappointment and responsibility and what family means. I waited until he finished and then I said, clearly and without any shakiness in my voice, that I would not be available to serve as staff at any future family events, that my time had the same value as anyone else's in this family, and that if that was difficult to accept then we could revisit our relationship on those terms. He hung up. I put the phone down and made myself a cup of tea and stood in my own kitchen, in my own apartment, in my own life, and felt something that I think was the closest thing to peace I had ever known. I had smiled on Christmas Eve. They had seen an empty kitchen. And I had finally seen myself clearly for the very first time.